Hello, Gino here, and you are listening to Otherworld Connections. We live in a critical time where now, more than ever, angels and fairies, hidden forces, are bursting at the seams of the veil to work with us. They want to see us change in order to save the world and live in service to others. So join me on a journey to empowerment and enlightenment with an angelic angle and a fairy focus, looking into ways to improve our current situation, morality, archetypes, solutions for self-healing, and spiritual sciences in light of theosophy and other occult traditions.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Otherworld Connections. That intro music sounds like some film noir murder mystery thing. What was I thinking? Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, let's bring up. I'm on video now. I am not live streaming yet, but anyway, today's show, we're talking about bees as part of a series of saving the bees to save ourselves. We're mostly just talking about bees to perk up our interest in bees. Not that you may not have been interested in them at all, but interesting, since we last spoke, the news out there is the bee situation has got worse. The thing is, the people that publish things about bees and that quote-unquote care about bees are all in the commercial bee production, honey production industry. So everything is wrapped around the framework of bee population losses in the context of the people that record these things, which is mostly honey people. honey making people interested in making money off bees. Did you know in New Zealand it's illegal for me to just say, you know what, I'm going to attract bees and let them have a beehive here. You're not allowed to do that. Well, you're especially not allowed to just set up a beehive in your back garden. You're not allowed. You have to do this, that, and the other thing, do a course, and blah, blah, blah. Very protective about honey here in New Zealand, even though primary industries, things such as honey, make up a very small amount of the, dare I say, GDP. And what does that all mean? Well, I don't really know, but when you come to New Zealand, all you see are cows for beef and milk and honey. Beehives, commercial beehives. That's about all you see if you go traveling around here. Sheep as well, of course, mostly sheep. But all that doesn't, the primary industries don't make up much, but they rely on the primary industries in the sense that if you have the primary industry people on your side, if you're a politician, then you most likely have the people, because once you get out of the cities, you have all the provinces which are farming type based communities. But anyway, back to the bees. Bees are dying. That is being recorded in terms of commercial production, especially in America. They keep an eye on those things, and the catastrophe has become even more catastrophic since we last spoke. Yes, it's like 60%. I think last time we spoke it was 40. So they're all dropping dead. When you have a garden, which I think is really the ultimate solution, when you have a garden and you work the garden and you consider the bees and put stuff in your garden that pollinators like, all that problem goes away. And Rudolf Steiner talks about something that he didn't call eco-spirituality, but he essentially created the concept of eco-spirituality, where adults, children, connecting with nature, which, you know, in our day and age, the best way to do that is to get in the garden, is the type of spirituality that we're supposed to, live. For lack of a better term, at 7 o'clock in the morning here in New Zealand on a cold, cold morning. Please consider donating to this place. Oh my goodness, a quick coffee too. Consider donating to Revolution Radio. There are many ways you can do that. Through Patreon, snail mail, check and money orders, direct payment for America, and I think Canada only. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash. Donor Box, which is the international alternative to PayPal. Haven't used it myself, but PayPal, ugh. Similar in format, but simpler to use. And all the ways to go about that can all be accessed on the homepage or the donations page on our website, revolution.radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. And you can also consider advertising on the homepage for a paltry sum of $25 per month. And they'll get a lot of eyes on that, that's for sure. If you go on the homepage, you'll see what you're in for there if you were to advertise. And just a reminder that you can find the link to anything I read or refer to during the show in the description of this episode once it's published on my website, thesecretkindergarten.com, because I do a kids show on Saturdays, 2 p.m. Eastern, Studio A right here on Revolution Radio. And I've got channels, Otherworld Connections, and so on and so forth, on my YouTube, otherworldconnections.substack.com, and there's Odyssey and Rumble, well, yeah, and obviously on the main podcast platforms. And as we speak, I can see my beautiful face on this computer monitor, and I've got it set up so the read along, the words are up there. What's the point of that? Eventually I'm going to be live streaming and eventually extending the show too, which might mean a few things have to be changed up. What else was I going to say? No, that's about it. It's just about the bees. An initiation for me with the bees. I'm going well over time already. That's Ernie in the background, playing guard dog. He's got a good bark on him. My initiation into a lot of things was saving bees just on a bee by bee case basis. You get a little bit of sugar and a little bit of water, and you save a stranded bee. Dip. Well, the most fun way is to dip your finger in the sugar water solution and offer the tip of your finger to the mouth of a bee, and then they have a big drink. Obviously stranded, they're not moving. Have you ever seen that? Just a bee sitting there, maybe on the windowsill, maybe on the ground, on the concrete, the asphalt, and then you go and give them some sugar water and you save them. And I learned that they are very, as I'm sure you probably know, they are extremely sensitive, extremely talented and powerful, as we have been learning, at unbelievably sensitive. And I think that's why drastic numbers can disappear for this, that, and the other reason. Chemical sprays and these kinds of things just absolutely wipe them out, and they wipe them out for an extended period of time. One little spray, a fly spray somewhere in some area, will leave a trail of dead bees in that part where you sprayed for at least a month, probably even more, including natural products. So these guys are very easily killed. But on the other side of things is, I want to get into, I haven't found the literature yet, just hearsay that bees are considered an interface to the other world, to the fairy realm, the angelic realm, this sort of thing. I would say bees are to fairies what birds are to angels. Does that make sense? That's my running theory. And giving a hoot about the bees give a hoot about us. And as we are learning from Rudolf Steiner's lectures, that we are intimately connected with bees. And bees are also, I'm just on an absolute rant this morning, bees absolutely have a special role for children, and the job that bees do, and pollination, and the role in which they play there, is the kids' version of sex education. And the Rosicrucians, Max Heindel talks about this in his writings on education for children. I'm a bit slow this morning, my brain's frozen. Is that what bees do? Kids should learn about that. And when they reach puberty and they're taught about sex education, procreation, they will receive it in a mature and natural way. It won't be such a slap in the face, for lack of a better term. So I hope that makes sense. And I just think it's also interesting that kids of more an appropriate size to observe bees, ants, and wasps and such and so forth in the garden. So the kids play. Kids are, I think, key holders there. So Rudolf Steiner, Bees with an Afterword on the Art of Joseph Beuys, lectures by Rudolf Steiner, printed by the Anthroposophic Press. Don't know where to put the accent on that word. Let's keep reading. We're continuing with Lecture 8. I'll just backtrack a paragraph or so. Blah-de-blah-de-blah. Here we go. Just move this over because I'm on video now. Yes, gentlemen. Life involves work, not substances. And the most important thing to know is that life doesn't consist at all in simply eating cabbage, turnips, or beets, but rather in what the body must do when the cabbage, turnip, or beet substances are taken into the digestive system. In any case, the body must not produce cabbage all over again from the cabbage that has just arrived in the digestive system. This is, remarkably, the very thing that is at the basis of our present-day civilization. But you'll see from this example what an unusual relationship exists within nature. Out there are the plants. The clover plant has been defined in the German language in a very special way. Chlysor means acid from clover, but actually clover acid or oxalic acid is found in all plants. It is simply that its greatest concentration is in the clover plant. That's why we talk about clover acid in German. Just as you will find formic acid, in German this is called ant acid, or acid from ants, since ants supply it in concentrated form. Everywhere in nature and everywhere in the human body. Likewise, you'll find everywhere in nature and in the human body chlysor or oxalic acid. Now, here is another very interesting fact. Take the following experiment. You have a retort, the kind you find in a chemical laboratory. I don't know what that is. You place a flame under it. I assume it's like a beaker thingy. You place a flame under it and introduce some oxalic acid into this retort. This is a salty, crumbly ash. Then add the same quantity of glycerin. You mix these constituents together and heat them. The steamy vapors will move over here, drawing on the blackboard, and you will be able to collect it at the open end whatever comes out. But at the same time that this is happening, you notice that air is escaping all over. When you examine and analyze this escaping air, you find that it is carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is escaping. And here, where you are collecting what is coming over, you have formic acid. Now there's formic acid, but in the retort, you had oxalic acid and glycerin. The glycerin remains and the other part moves over. The liquid formic acid drops down over here, and the carbon dioxide escapes at this point. Now, take a very good look at this whole procedure. Assume for a moment that instead of a retort, you had the human liver before you, or let's say any human or animal tissue drawing on the blackboard. Any organ located in the animal abdomen, liver, spleen, or another organ of that type. Through the stomach, I introduce oxalic acid. The body has, by itself, glycerin. So then I have in my intestines both oxalic acid and glycerin. And what happens? Now examine the human mouth. That is where the carbon dioxide escapes. And the formic acid drops down from the lungs in every direction toward the other organs in the human body. So this whole process that I have sketched for you, you have to watch the video because there's a sketch. I'm sure you can imagine it. So the process I have sketched for you is really taking place in our own bodies. We are constantly producing formic acid from oxalic acid in our bodies. Now think of all the plants that are found all over the earth. In all of them you'll find oxalic acid. And think of the insects. In the case of insects, the facts emerge in a very remarkable way. Think, first of all, of the ants. They go to these plants, or to the rotting material that comes from plants, everywhere. Everywhere. In all these things there is oxalic acid, and these animals, just as humans do themselves, make formic acid from them. This formic acid is present everywhere. Insects make it possible for formic acid to be present everywhere. Yes, a Philistine will look into the air and say that in the air there is nitrogen and oxygen. But, gentlemen, there is always formic acid present in a very small amount, because the insects fly through the air. What this means is that we have on one side the human being. The human being is a microcosm, a little world or universe. A person creates formic acid within and saturates the breath continually with formic acid. And in the macrocosm, in the great world or universe, the process that takes place within the human being is replaced by the whole army of insects. And that's another, just stepping out from that, that's another very Steiner thing to say. I just want to say that again. In the macrocosm, the process that takes place within the human being is replaced by the whole army of insects. And that's Rudolf Steiner applying the natural law principle of correspondence. That the process going on inside us corresponds to the process going on with all of the insects doing their thing on planet Earth. Back into it. The great breath of air that surrounds the entire Earth is saturated with the formic acid that is created from the oxalic acid present in plants. It really happens this way. If you observe correctly and examine the lower part of the body of a human being with the stomach, liver, kidneys, spleen, and intestines, you will find that it is true that oxalic acid is continually being transformed into formic acid in these organs. This formic acid enters along with the air a person inhales, and in this way it is distributed to all the parts of the body. This is what goes on in human beings. On this earth, you have plants everywhere. Then you have in various forms the insects that fly over it. Down there you have oxalic acid. The insects fly to the plants and make contact with them. Through this contact, formic acid is created and spreads throughout the air, so that we also breathe in formic acid that is present in the air around us. That which the wasps have is a poison very similar to formic acid, only partially transformed. That which bees carry around in their stingers, actually the entire body of the bee possesses it. It's also transformed formic acid, but transformed to a higher degree. When you examine this, you come to say to yourself, we look at these insects, ants, wasps, bees, and find that they are doing a very smart thing. Why are they doing something that appears to show so much intelligence? If the ant didn't have any formic acid, it would accomplish all those marvelous things which I have described for you in a rather stupid manner. Only because ants are created in such a way that they can produce formic acid does everything that they construct seem so full of understanding and reason. The same is true for wasps and bees. Doesn't this give us occasion to say to ourselves, if we also produce this formic acid within ourselves, that in nature understanding and knowledge are found everywhere? This is all due to formic acid. We also have understanding and knowledge within us because we have formic acid. Formic acid would not exist if it weren't for oxalic acid being present beforehand. And so the little insects flutter about the plants and are the reason why the oxalic acid in plants is changed into formic acid, or, if you will, undergoes a metamorphosis. These are the things you begin to understand only if you now ask yourself what the situation is with oxalic acid. You see, oxalic acid is present everywhere where there is life. Wherever something is alive, there is oxalic acid, but there is also an etheric body. One function that the etheric body carries out is that it immediately renews oxalic acid. However, oxalic acid will never become formic acid of a type that a human or animal organism can use unless the astral body transforms the oxalic acid into formic acid. Oh, this is the Steiner headache that I get. Oh, God bless him. Yeah, this is very Steiner. Etheric body, astral body, and what they have to do for us in relation to the subject that he's talking about. So it's like, woof. For it is a fact that the formic acid is derived from the process in the retort is a formic acid that will be of no benefit to the human or animal body. You'll be deceived if you believe that it can really help at all, because in reality it is dead. So I just want to step out and say, are you feeling it? Are you feeling back to one of his beginning statements is life is about work, not substance, and formic acid is like one of these chemicals of life. I don't know if you call it a chemical, but it's an acid. It's what makes life, and it's what makes us all connected, and it's associated with processes, work, not substance. So, when I read Steiner, there's like there are a number of underlying messages. I think one of the underlying things that I'm picking up on here is that, life is about work. We can't just have things handed to us, and there is give and take, and that is part of how everything works. So anyway, if we step back in, the formic acid creating in humans and by insects is alive, and it appears wherever sensations and feelings arise, and the soul element is present. A human being must develop formic acid within if such a person wants to generate the soul element from the basic level of life processes that exist in the lower body, where oxalic acid plays a very important role. Then the soul element lives in the formic acid of the breath and rises to the head, where it can continue to function and become effective. The soul element needs this process that converts oxalic acid into formic acid within a human being. What really happens when the oxalic acid is converted into formic acid? You see, the first thing that I told you about can give you the answer. This would-be I spoke about is very interesting in this regard, just because it works its way into wood that no longer has life in it. If this would-be could not properly use the wood, it would probably seek its nest elsewhere. It doesn't bore its nest into the living trees, but rather into already rotting wood. Wherever posts begin to rot is a place where it lays its eggs after it has constructed its nest. If you study the connection between rotting material and the wood-bees, you'll eventually find out that the same process that occurs in rotting wood also takes place continually in the human body. It begins to rot, and if it rots too much, it dies. The process that takes place in nature is the same one a human being must carry out. A person needs to construct cells. This is something an individual can do only by transforming plant material that is saturated with oxalic acid into formic acid, into a substance that is saturated with formic acid. Now you can ask what significance this whole process has for nature. Well, gentlemen, let's imagine a wooden post that is decaying. People would prefer that a wood-bee never come near their posts, since these bees usually spread out quite a bit within the post. And the next year this post would probably fall over because the bees have hollowed it out. People may not really like this very much, but nature loves this process all the more for the benefits it derives from it. For if all the wood that comes from the plants were to continue its existence without these bees' nests, the wood would eventually, you can watch this process as things rot, crumble, fall to dust, and become entirely useless material. However, the wood in which a wood-bee has worked does not simply get scattered about, but, on the contrary, it takes on life again. And from all this wood that has been slightly enlivened again by these wood bees, and for that matter, likewise by other insects, much of that material will arise that will keep the earth from decaying completely, from becoming a cloud of dust in space. This material will make it possible for Earth to continue its life, because it is constantly being restored to life by these insects. Isn't that amazing? Right, where are we? As human beings, we inhale formic acid, but in nature, the formic acid that is prepared by insects from the oxalic acid of plants functions in such a way that it becomes the only way to make possible the continued existence of Earth at all. And on that note, I'm just going to step out for a moment. My puppy is suspiciously quiet, and I'm trying today having him not tied up because I don't like that. So I want to see what he's up to. Just give me one moment, please. Hey, come here. Good boy, drop it. Drop it. Good boy. I'll leave the door open. Okay? Good boy. Alright, sorry about that, folks. Yeah, he was up to no good. He was chewing on a bag. You chewing on a bag, mate? So now I've got to have the door open. I'm going to get my gloves on. If I can find them. Oh, it's chilly. Yeah, so the formic acid prepared by insects from the oxalic acid of plants functions in such a way that it becomes the only way to make possible the continued existence of the earth at all. Dun dun dun! So yeah, we got to look after these insects. Alright. Okay. He's a very needy puppy this morning. Feels weird calling you a puppy because you're a giant monster. Alright. Let's get back into it. Excuse me, folks. Now examine the connection between these things. Here we have the human being, and here the earth. Let's look at the human being first. Let's assume it's a young child. As long as this child is still young, it can transform very easily the oxalic acid located in the lower body into formic acid. The organs get enough formic acid. The human soul develops within the child. So here we have formic acid as the foundation for soul and spirit. And when a human becomes old and can't develop enough formic acid anymore, the soul and spirit leave. It's the formic acid that attracts and mobilizes soul and spirit. Otherwise, the spirit will go away. This is very interesting. If, for example, you observe properly a person with very many internal purulent infections, you'll find it is true that formic acid will help such a person overcome these infections. Then the proper relationship between the astral body and the physical body will re-establish itself. A relationship that was disturbed and hindered by the infections. We can say that formic acid is always used in the proper way as the foundation for soul and spirit. If the body just happens to have too little formic acid, it will decay and will no longer be able to support the soul. The body ages and the soul must leave. Now we have the human being on one side here, and on the other side is nature. In nature as well, formic acid is derived continuously from oxalic acid, so that the earth constantly has the possibility of being surrounded not only by oxygen and nitrogen, but also by formic acid. This formic acid makes it possible for the earth not to die off completely each year, but instead to be able to resuscitate itself year after year. What is located beneath the earth as seed has a longing for formic acid, and this is what the process of rejuvenation consists of. Every winter, the spirit of the earth is itself striving to leave or simply go away. And in spring, it restores itself to life again. The spirit of the earth causes the earth to become rigid and stiff in winter. In spring, it enlivens the earth once more. This happens because that which waits under the earth as seed comes into contact with the formic acid that has been created the previous year by the interaction of the insect world with the plant world. The seeds develop, grow, and make contact not only with oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide, but also with formic acid. This formic acid stimulates them to develop oxalic acid once again by themselves, which in turn makes it possible for formic acid to be present the next year. But just as formic acid in a human being can provide the basis for the presence of soul and spirit, so, likewise, the formic acid that is spread out over the cosmos provides the foundation for the presence of the earth's spiritual and soul element. Now we can say that in the case of the earth, formic acid is also the basis for the earth's soul and the earth's spirit. It is actually more difficult to transmit a telegram in a region where there are not ant colonies than it is in a region where they exist, because the electricity and the magnetism needed for telegraphy depend upon formic acid. When the telegraph wires go through a city where there are no ants, the power to accomplish transmission must come from the countryside, where the wires pass through the fields, so that the magnetic and electric current will make its way through the cities at all. But, naturally, formic acid, spreads itself out and also fills the air that exists in the cities. Well, gentlemen, now you see that we can say that whatever is contained within a human being, with regard to the production of formic acid as well, also exists in nature. A human being is a microcosm. I'm just going to move. Ernie is just killing me right now. I thought it'd be more interesting to put the camera on him, but of course, I don't know if you notice with pets, if you mention cameras or you go to take a photo, they just disappear. All right. Yeah, so formic acid spreads itself out and fills the air that exists in the cities. Whatever is contained within a human being with regard to the production of formic acid as well also exists in nature. A human being is a microcosm, a small world. It is uniquely the case with a human being that throughout life until death, a person possesses the capacity to make formic acid from oxalic acid. But then a human being loses this capacity and the physical body dies. Then the human soul has to wait before once again receiving a body in which a child properly transforms oxalic acid into formic acid. There he is. That's Ernie on the screen there. Totally killing me. You're killing me, my boy. He's a very tactile doggy. So, with nature, this process continues on and on. Winter, summer, winter, summer. The oxalic acid is always transformed into formic acid. If you carefully observe a dying individual, you'll get the feeling that there is an effort on the part of this person, even in the process of dying, to find out whether the body is still capable of creating formic acid. Then, at the point when the body is no longer capable of the task, the death takes over. A human being goes into the spirit world and can't endure any longer being in the body. I'm literally playing with Ernie with my hand while I'm trying to read this. I'm sorry, but this is spiritual practice, guys. Caring for other living beings while trying to do something good at the same time in multitasking, that is how you build your intuition, 100%. That's why spending time with the kids is always good for the soul. And now he's jumping up on me. Come on, you got to get down. Off. You want to say something? You say hello? Okay. I know. Okay, off. Oh, right. We can say that a human being dies at a certain point in time, and after a long period of time, comes back in another body. Meanwhile, this person is in the spirit world. When a young queen emerges in a beehive, as I've told you, there is something that disturbs the bees. Up until this event, the bees have been living in what might be called a twilight. When they see the young queen giving off a light, what is connected with the shining of this young queen? What is connected with it is the young queen is taking away the power of the bee poison that the old queen possesses. And this, gentlemen, is the great fear of a swarm that leaves its hive. It is afraid that it no longer possesses bee poison. A state that means that it can't defend itself anymore or save itself. So it moves away from this disturbing source, the young queen. In the same way that the human soul leaves the body when it can't get enough formic acid, the older bees also leave when there is an insufficient amount of altered formic acid, bee poison, present. And if you now look at a swarm of bees, it is, to be sure, visible, but it really looks like the soul of a human being. A soul that is forced to leave its body. So, the correspondences between the way bees go about things and how life is for us, how existence is for us. Well, it's mind-blowing. This is mind-blowing. The swarm of bees corresponding to the soul leaving the body. The swarm is leaving a place that has died to them. This is truly a grand sight to see a horde of bees swarming away. In the same way in which the human soul leaves the body, so does the old queen, after a young queen reaches adulthood, leave the hive with her company. You can really see by looking at the escaping swarm of bees an image of the human soul flying away from the body. O gentlemen, this is a grand sight to behold. There's only a slight difference in that the human soul has never reached the point of developing its powers sufficiently to create these little creatures. Within us, there is continually the tendency to want to do this. We want to become many tiny creatures. We actually have within ourselves a tendency to continually want to change the form of things inside our bodies so that they become like crawling bacilli or bacteria, or like little bees, but we suppress this process before it happens. In so doing, we become complete human beings and not a collection of tiny entities. But the beehive is not a complete human being. Bees can't find their way into the spirit world. We have to take them to an empty beehive to bring about a rebirth or reincarnation of these bees. And I'll go so far to say as talking about this sort of thing with kids will help them to accept more naturally the concept of reincarnation later in the third stage of their development, 14 years to 21 years of age. And, feels good to know what's right through what's going on in nature, or what is true. And the truth is natural to accept, right? Because it feels right. Anyway. Back to the reading. This is very directly a picture of reincarnating human beings. That person who can observe such a phenomenon develops a tremendous respect for these old swarming bees with their queen. A swarm that acts the way it does because it is trying to find its way into the spirit world, into the spiritual world. But this swarm has become so caught up in the material world, so physical, that it can no longer fulfill this desire. So the bees cuddle up together and become a single body. They want very much to be together. They want to leave this world. And you also know that while they are flying about, they might attach themselves to a tree trunk or something similar, and then they press themselves together in order to disappear, because they want to gain entrance into the spirit world. And then they once again become a proper colony when we help them by bringing them back to their new beehive. So from this description, you could probably say that insects teach us nothing short of what might be considered the highest understanding we can derive from nature. This is why looking at plants always enlightened the people of antiquity, who still have an instinctive sense for those things that I've been explaining to you, matters that present-day science has lost sight of completely. Back then, people looked upon plants in a very special way. In our day, people are sometimes reminded of some of these things. For instance, when they bring home a fir tree and make a Christmas tree out of it, then people are reminded of the fact that the way things are in nature can also become something important in the lives of human beings. Can be something that can have an effect on our social lives. It's supposed to be a symbol for love, this fir tree transformed into a Christmas tree. People generally believe that the idea of a Christmas tree is very old, but the fir tree was first used as a Christmas tree probably only 150 to 200 years ago. Before that time, this custom did not exist, but people did use a type of bush at Christmas. For example, during the Christmas plays that were performed in villages as early as the 15th and 16th centuries, there was someone who ran about advertising the play and also carried in his hand what might be considered a Christmas tree. But this was the so-called Kranenwittbaum, a term used only in Middle Germany. In reality, this tree is the juniper, which has wonderful berries. Back then, people took a juniper to serve as a Christmas tree. Why? Because the juniper berries that birds so much like to eat showed them the slight effect of poison that arises and must be penetrated by the earth element, so that the spiritual element might arise within it. The same way that the ant is drawn to a wooden material or the wood bee goes to posts, another, much weaker acid is produced all over every morning by the bird picking at the berries on the juniper. The people of antiquity knew this instinctively and said to themselves that during winter, when the juniper stands there and the birds come to pick its berries, the earth is once again rejuvenated, re-enlivened by means of the juniper. From this natural phenomenon, people formed a picture in their minds, one with a moral sense. Christ is re-enlivening the earth. Okay, well that's pretty deep. We've got a few minutes left. I don't know if we'll make it. Oh no, we will. We're going to. Here we go. So now we can already say, looking at things in a properly natural way, we can see in all the processes of nature symbols and representations of these things that occur in human life. He's got the bag again. Ernie! People long ago looked at the birds sitting in a juniper with the same love as people today have when they see little Christmas cookies or the presents under the Christmas trees. That's very sweet. The juniper was, for these people, a kind of Christmas tree that they carried into their homes. So it is that a juniper was made into something like a Christmas tree. Now we need to come to a conclusion. I didn't want to allow today's session to pass by. I know this is a very stressful time for all of you, without having spoken about a very important subject. And we made it all the way to some thoughts about a bush that might really be looked upon as a Christmas tree, the juniper, which offers to birds the same things that plants offer to bees, and that wood offers to ants, and wood bees, and generally to all insects. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy, joyful, inwardly uplifting Christmas. We will let you know when the next lecture will be. It will be sometime in the near future. So there we go. Very interesting about the juniper there. Well, it's compelling, and that, oh man, it's just one paragraph of Rudolf Steiner requires so much contemplation and thought. It's unbelievable, this guy, man. This guy is just meta man. It's unbelievable. Yeah. So there's something to be said about just observing nature, spending time in nature. I think some of it, that's all it takes, especially for the kids. I do have some fond memories of spending time in the back garden when I was a young child. And I wonder how much of that affected me in terms of what I have come to know now. I am assuming from when I read Steiner that there is a correspondence between, or there is a correlation between the two things. So what's the solution right now that we can think of is to get out there in the garden. Like Jerry Quintero. She's out there in the garden. And Mitzi from Bridget'swell on Revolution Radio. She told me she was. So there we go. Get out in the garden. Consider the bees. If you see a stranded bee, do save them with a bit of sugar water. That feels really good, and it's one way of initiating yourself into making these otherworld connections. So there we go. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. And if you want to see this on the video, well, it's just what you heard with my face and a little bit of Ernie. I took the camera on him. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you at the next one.